No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to fly kites with me at this weekend's summer camp getaway. Hey kids, welcome back to the channel. I'm Uncle Frank, hoping that you are having a great day, and in today's video we are going to sit back, relax, and talk about the reserved list. That's right, that's a topic that's sure to make me no small amount of infinite friends, right? For those of you who don't know, the reserved list is a rather contentious thing in the world of Magic the Gathering. It's been in place now for a little under 30 years. It's almost as old as the game itself. And there are a lot of people who are for and against it and have various opinions on its effect on the game itself, its secondary market prices, its overall health, its accessibility, and all sorts of other things. But in this video, I just want to lay out the basics for you so you guys have an understanding of what it is in future conversations, because this is a topic I do believe I will be visiting in the future for a variety of reasons, especially for future videos where I want to compare Magic's secondary market to something like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon. So I figured a basic video giving the simplest possible understanding of the reserved list would be a good way to make sure that those future videos can come out without 10 minutes of preamble explaining the reserved list. That's what this one's for. So got my little notepad with some notes so I don't get anything horribly wrong. And let's just start by saying that back in the day, when I was a kid, in Magic's earliest days, the card game was starting even back then to be seen as a collectible. Even back then, I know it's a common kind of joke on the internet to say that certain rare cards like Black Lotus or Time Walk weren't recognized for the value they could have. But even back then, even way back in the before days, people saw the value in those cards, and there was quite a collector's community for them. And when I say collectible, I mean it. There were people parking significant amounts of dollars in these, as Perp would put it, cardboard rectangles. And there was some confidence back then that the cards they were collecting would retain their value, because going into 1996, there weren't a lot of meaningful reprints. And by meaningful, I mean things like revised and forward. I don't count Unlimited as a meaningful reprint. It was still a pretty small print run, with a lot of the cards that were reprinted there not getting a reprint in revised and 4th edition, etc. But Wizards was aware of the growing size of the game. They were trying to make more cards more available to more players, because after all, more players playing the game means more money coming in and everyone's happy, right? You know, and the number one thing that those new players want is cheaper cards. They don't want to be spending all this extra money on these cards that have not had a lot of reprints. So what does Wizards do? Well, they put out sets like Chronicles and 4th edition, which reprint a lot of the cards from the first few sets and make them very widely available. Especially Chronicles in particular hits a lot of Legends cards, including some powerful Elder Dragons, for instance. And this does the intended job of getting all these older cards that were previously difficult to get a hold of into the hands of the new and growing audience. But it has the unintended side effect of making a lot of collectors very upset. And these guys, they got like really upset back in the day. Like, we're talking all kinds of furious letters, hate mail, etc. And Wizards heard them loud and clear. And they decided to put out a little announcement to the community in response to the sheer volume of backlash they received over reprint sets like Chronicles and 4th edition, where they basically said, hey guys, going forward, we're going to create this thing called the reserved list. And what it means is Any card that had not received a significant reprint up until this point, anything from like Alpha Beta Unlimited, Arabian Nights, Dark Antiquities, I am forgetting something, I will probably not remember. They just made a little informal agreement with the community in writing, but not like in legal writing. They made an agreement to just not reprint those cards. Ever. Not, we won't reprint these cards for at least 5 years. Not, we won't reprint these cards in any kind of core set. You'll have to wait for a specialty product. No, it was, we, Wizards of the Coast, will just not ever reprint these cards. And that caused the reserve list to be created. Now, they also said that rare cards in sets going forward after the initial creation could also be added to the list, which is why you see things from like Urza's Saga, Tempest, etc. being added to the reserved list even though they weren't out at the time. So this was also a thing saying going forward, hey, collectors, you can be confident that this won't just affect cards that exist now. You can also be confident that rare cards in the future will stay rare because we won't reprint those either. And it's been a point of contention ever since. 2002 saw the first major change to the reserve list, I suppose I should call it. They removed a bunch of cards from it. Common and uncommon cards that were previously locked on the list were freed up to be reprinted. Most importantly, in my opinion, Demonic Tutor and Soul Ring. Demonic Tutor being just a generally good card, and Soul Ring being, well, the Commander All-Star it's known for. You have to play it in Commander or you're not really playing Commander, all that jazz. And in 2010, there was another addendum to the list because they had been reprinting some cards on the list as premium foils for special products, like from the Vault or Dual Decks. And some collectors pointed out that technically violates the spirit of the reserved list if you're printing them just as foils. So Wizards said, you got us. We're not going to do that again either. So that was the last time that anything from Wizards of the Coast has been said in regards to the reserved list. And look, there is a lot of back and forth discussion. There has been for a very long time. It's not going to be something that I think is going to be solved in the immediate future or even in the, put that over there, near to mid future. I don't think it's going to be something that is really addressed in any timeline I can think of, because Wizards has no real reason to touch on it again right now. And there's people who think that the reserved list is the ultimate backbone of the Magic secondary market because it gives someone confidence that the oldest collectibles they can find, the rarest collectibles they can find in the Magic ecosystem, are going to stay unblemished by Wizards of the Coast's reprint policies. There are people who think that the reserved list is one of the most damaging aspects of Magic the Gathering, and it makes a game where new players are prohibited from playing the oldest formats, and it locks them out of access to some of the game's strongest cards. I, myself, for those 3 people out there who care, find myself somewhere in the middle, like the vile centrist I am. I believe that the reserved list is a necessary evil, and that as time goes on, there are more pros than cons to it. And let me just explain what I mean there. You see, Magic has had its ups and downs. Wizards of the Coast has made some very questionable decisions for the game, including how they choose to reprint cards and how they choose to use that reprint equity that they have built up over the last 30 years. There are some decisions they've made that I believe, if the reserve list was not a thing, they would violently apply to those older cards. So it does give investors, collectors, some confidence that there is at least something, some aspect to Magic the Gathering that Wizards can't just tip over because they want to make a quick buck on a Saturday evening. You know, 30th anniversary aside, the reserved list has proven over time to be remarkably resolute and kind of I wouldn't necessarily say a good thing, but a good thing to keep an eye on if you're looking to park money in Magic the Gathering long term, because besides sealed product, the reserved list is one of the safer things you can park your money into in the Magic ecosystem. However, I also acknowledge that at the same time, you know, the reserved list does price some people out of older formats and even like casual formats like Commander. Dual lands are legal for that. Dual lands are on the reserved list. And I don't think there's an easy solution to the reserved list question, but I do think that the reserved list is something that's worth talking about, not just in regards to the history of Magic, but in regards to how it shapes Magic's kind of secondary market ecosystem, because you're going to see cards that otherwise would not be as expensive as they are demanding quite impressive price tags just because there's that confidence that they won't be reprinted, which is wild to me. And part of what inspired this video was the recent revelation that Yu-Gi-Oh! Has probably has its own pseudo reserve list in the existence of Elemental Hero Airneos, which we now have some reason to believe will never be reprinted, which has caused interest in the card to spike up again, driving the price up again, and leading to the discussion of, you know, is it a good or a bad thing to have a collectible that will never be available to newer additions to the game? And the reserved list forms itself kind of as the archetypal example of that situation, where this is a stack of cards, good and bad cards. There are some really great cards on the reserved list and some super duds on the reserved list, but regardless, the reserved list is kind of the best example of this exclusivity item, where no more of it's coming out. Is this a good or a bad thing for the game in general? And that's just something I want to put out there. I'm not going to give you guys, I'm not going to talk about, you know, whether or not I think it should go or should stay. That's not what this video is for. You know, I think there's pros and cons to it, but this video is just a general groundwork for future videos, so that in the future, when I'm talking about Magic the Gathering versus Pokemon collecting and investing, or Magic versus Yu-Gi-Oh! Investing, I have a bit of just general knowledge that you guys can all fall back on for what this topic is, what it means, etc. So that's all this was. This was basically just an encyclopedia entry for the channel. So if you enjoyed, leave a like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. If you hated it, please don't hate the video. Come on, man. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys next time.